A teenager steps into the courtroom, dismissed as just a kid, but when she reveals her hidden legal genius, everything changes. Can she turn the tide and defend an innocent man against powerful forces trying to silence her? The courtroom was tense as Judge Martin Jacobs leaned back in his chair, a smirk on his face. His voice filled the room, dripping with sarcasm as he addressed the girl standing nervously at the defendant's table. "Miss Taylor, do you know where you are?" he asked, eyeing her simple jeans and oversized sweatshirt. The laughter from the gallery echoed around, making her cheeks flush. 17-year-old Mia Taylor stood alone, clutching a stack of papers that seemed too heavy for her slight frame. Her sneakers squeaked as she shifted her weight, but her eyes were steady, refusing to look away from the judge. "Your Honor," she began, her voice surprisingly calm despite the mocking atmosphere. Judge Jacobs waved his hand dismissively, cutting her off. "Save it. This is a courtroom, not a school project. I can't believe we're wasting time on this." The chuckles from the attorneys seated behind their desks only added to Mia's anxiety. But Mia straightened her posture, determination shining in her eyes. "If you give me a chance to speak, Your Honor, I promise it will be worth your time." A gasp rippled through the courtroom. Who did this teenager think she was? Judge Jacobs leaned forward, his amusement fading. "Enlighten us, Miss Taylor," he said, his tone shifting to one of curiosity. Taking a deep breath, Mia adjusted the papers in her hands and began to speak. What happened next stunned everyone in the room. As she spoke, Mia delivered a well-structured argument, citing legal terms and precedents like a seasoned lawyer. The attorneys who had been laughing moments ago were now scribbling notes, their expressions shifting from amusement to disbelief. "What is happening?" Judge Jacobs whispered to himself as he leaned closer to the desk. Mia was not just any teenager. She was smart, confident, and undeniably correct. The atmosphere in the courtroom changed from mockery to respect. "Who are you?" the judge finally asked, his tone no longer mocking but genuinely intrigued. Mia met his gaze, a small smile on her lips. "I'm Mia Taylor, and I'm here to defend my client." Chaos erupted in the courtroom. Questions flew from every direction as Judge Jacobs banged his gavel, demanding order. He was visibly shaken. How could a teenager command this much attention and respect? But amidst the chaos, Mia's calm resolve began to falter as she prepared to reveal her secret. 2 weeks earlier, she had been just a regular girl sitting in her room, surrounded by her brother's old law books. Her brother Jake had always dreamed of being a lawyer, but his life was cut short in a tragic accident. Mia had made it her mission to learn everything she could about the law after his death. She wanted to honor Jake's memory and prove to everyone that she was strong enough to stand up for what was right. One day, her best friend Sarah had stopped by, munching on chips. "Mia, you're only a kid. Why are you doing this?" she had asked, her tone filled with concern. Mia had looked up from her notes, her expression serious. "Because someone has to fight for those who can't fight for themselves," she replied, her determination unwavering. Now, standing in the courtroom, she felt the weight of her brother's dream on her shoulders. Judge Jacobs finally took a moment to gather himself, eyeing Mia with a mix of skepticism and curiosity. "So, you really think you can represent this defendant?" Mia nodded, her voice steady. "Yes, Your Honor. I may not have a law degree, but I've studied for months. I know the case inside out." The judge raised an eyebrow, unimpressed. "Believing you're qualified is one thing, but this is a serious matter." She didn't flinch. "Let me prove it, Your Honor." The courtroom fell silent, all eyes on Mia as the judge considered her words. Just then, the door swung open, and a tall man in a sharp suit strode in, drawing everyone's attention. "Your Honor," he said, his voice commanding, "I believe I can clarify this situation." Mia turned, her heart racing. Who was this man, and what did he want? The man introduced himself as Alex Reed, an investigator with the State Bar Association. "We received a tip about an unlicensed individual attempting to represent a client," he explained, his gaze shifting to Mia. The air in the room thickened as Judge Jacobs looked from Alex to Mia. What do you mean, unlicensed? The judge asked, his tone sharp. Mia's heart sank. She had worked so hard to get here, and now it felt like everything was slipping away. She gripped the papers tightly, determined not to back down. Your Honor, she said, her voice steady, I understand the concerns, but I've done my research. My client deserves a fair defense. Judge Jacobs frowned, clearly displeased with the turn of events. Just then, Alex stepped forward again, ready to back her up. Allow her to continue, Your Honor. Justice should not be overshadowed by paperwork, he said firmly. Mia felt a surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she could prove herself in this unexpected battle. But the judge's face remained stern as he contemplated the situation. Very well, Miss Taylor. You have my permission to continue, but tread carefully. Mia took a deep breath, her mind racing with the weight of the moment. She was ready for the fight of her life, not just for her client, but for her brother's legacy. As Mia prepared to continue her argument, the tension in the courtroom hung thick in the air. She could feel the eyes of everyone on her, waiting to see if she would falter or rise to the challenge. With renewed determination, she began to lay out her case. Your Honor, my client, Mr. Thompson, is accused of theft, but the evidence is circumstantial at best, she stated, her voice clear and confident. She pulled out a document, holding it up for everyone to see. This receipt shows that he was at a different location at the time of the alleged crime. I have witnesses who can back this up. Murmurs spread through the courtroom as she presented her evidence. The laughter that had echoed just moments before was replaced by a growing respect for the young woman standing before them. Even Judge Jacobs leaned forward, intrigued. Where did you get this information, Miss Taylor? He asked, his tone now serious. I interviewed witnesses and gathered public records, Your Honor. I know this may seem unorthodox, but I spent weeks preparing this defense, Mia replied, her heart pounding. Just then, the door opened again, and in walked a stern-looking woman in a sharp blazer. She strode confidently to the front, capturing everyone's attention. Your Honor, my name is Claire Sanders, and I represent the prosecution, she announced, her voice cutting through the tension. While Miss Taylor may have some interesting arguments, the evidence against her client remains overwhelming. Mia's stomach twisted. She had anticipated a challenge, but this was different. Claire was known for being tough and relentless. I'd like to call my first witness, Claire continued, her expression unreadable. Mia glanced nervously at Judge Jacobs, who nodded for Claire to proceed. A moment later, in walked a man Mia recognized immediately, Victor Grant, the businessman who had accused her brother, Jake, years ago. Mia's heart raced. What was he doing here? Mr. Grant, can you explain your relationship to the defendant, Mr. Thompson? Claire asked, her tone dripping with authority. Grant smirked as he took the stand. I know him well. He's a known troublemaker, always in the wrong place at the wrong time. He's been involved in shady dealings before. Mia felt her blood boil. This man was a liar, and she needed to expose him. She quickly raised her hand. Objection, Your Honor. Mr. Grant's testimony is biased. He has a history of manipulating the truth to serve his own agenda, Mia argued, her voice strong despite her nerves. Judge Jacobs looked at her, surprised by her confidence. Miss Taylor, this is your opportunity to cross-examine him. Proceed. Mia stood tall, heart pounding, as she faced Grant. Mr. Grant, can you tell us why you were at the scene of the crime on the night in question? Grant shifted uncomfortably. I was there for business, he stammered. And were you involved in any illegal activities that night? Mia pressed on. Absolutely not, Grant exclaimed, his voice louder than intended. Mia seized the moment. Then why did you leave town immediately after the incident? Isn't it true that you had a motive to frame my client to distract from your own misdeeds? Gasps echoed in the courtroom, and Judge Jacobs raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. Grant's face turned red. I had nothing to do with that. This is a joke, Mia continued, her confidence growing. But you were caught on video leaving the scene, weren't you? A video that, let's not forget, was never submitted to the court during my brother's trial. The courtroom buzzed with murmurs. Mia could feel the tide turning in her favor. Claire's expression hardened. Your Honor, this is irrelevant. We need to focus on the charges against Mr. Thompson. Mia shot a glance at the judge. But if Mr. Grant is lying to protect himself, it directly impacts my client's innocence. Judge Jacobs weighed her words carefully. Very well. Miss Taylor, continue. Mia felt a rush of adrenaline. This was her moment. She had to make it count. I have evidence that proves Mr. Grant's credibility is questionable, she said, pulling out a folder filled with documents. These emails show a pattern of deceit and manipulation, including threats made against witnesses who could testify against him. The courtroom fell silent as she laid out each piece of evidence, her heart racing. Claire's face paled as she realized the implications. Your Honor, I object. This is all circumstantial. But Judge Jacobs held up his hand. Miss Taylor, if this evidence is valid, it must be considered. I will allow it. Mia felt a wave of relief wash over her. She was gaining ground, but she knew she had to stay focused. With renewed energy, she looked at Grant. Mr. Grant, you're not the victim here. You've been playing both sides to save your own skin. Isn't that right? Grant opened his mouth to protest, but Mia pressed on. You may have fooled the court once, but you won't do it again. The truth is out, and it's not just about my client anymore. It's about justice. As the courtroom buzzed with excitement, Mia felt a surge of hope. She had come this far, and she wasn't going to let fear hold her back. Judge Jacobs banged his gavel, calling for order. I will not tolerate any further disruptions. This court will take a brief recess to review the evidence. Mia took a deep breath, knowing this was just the beginning. She had fought hard, but the battle for justice was far from over. When they returned, the stakes would be even higher. Mia was ready to face whatever came next, determined to prove that she was not just a teenager, but a force to be reckoned with in the courtroom.